Okay, and let me share my screen real quick. So again, these are, let me make sure y'all can see my screen. Then it'll be posted to my YouTube. So on my, can y'all see my screen? And then my YouTube. Oh yeah, this is lagging already. Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I'll do it on OBS today, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to change this for the future. Yeah, this is terrible. This is so annoying. All right. Wait, is that my YouTube? Okay. Yeah, yeah. I just posted the YouTube in the link, but I'll send an announcement after, with the actual like video link itself. Okay. So yeah, we have a decent amount of people. So I don't have like a set schedule or like topics that I go through here. The whole logic is obviously you guys have access to on Tuesdays. Is it just Tuesdays? When is it that you guys get free access, or is it Fridays as well? But the point is, I know we have the heat seeker support channel and analysis where Julie and I, sometimes John, even Glitch, are making comments. But the whole point of this hour, 2 hours, okay, Tuesday, Friday. Thanks, Donnie. The whole point of this session, right, is for y'all to have a bit more of an open space where you guys can ask questions, right? I know sometimes when you guys message within the support, it takes us a bit of time to get back. So um, the whole goal of these is just to open the floor up for any of y'all to have questions, whether you're in Asgard or not. My intention with these sessions is I'll help in any way I can. So then, when you guys do have free access on Tuesdays and Fridays, you can maximize your usage of the tool, right? So probably some of you have been in here a while and have actually used HeatSeeker quite a bit, even whether it's free access or in Asgard. But probably some of y'all are pretty new, so I'll make no assumptions in terms of like how much background knowledge you have, and I'll try to explain as much as needed while we're in this session. And then also, if any questions are a bit more involved, I'll try to point you to the correct resources that you can look into in the future. And then, yeah, I also want you guys to be aware that like I'm available as a resource within this hour, 1 to 2 hours a week. But then also outside of this, you can DM me at any time, and I'll get back to you. Sometimes it's by end of day, but I'll get you a reply as quick as I can. If there's any questions you may have as you use the tool, or just general questions about how it works and all of that. All right, so yeah, like I said, any questions, just start sort of throwing them through. What I'll do. Oh, there's someone on YouTube. What's up, Mosley? What I'm going to do is, yeah, any question that's posted either on YouTube or Discord, I'll make sure to repeat it so anyone watching the recording can actually know what's going on. Because I've messed up quite a few videos where I'm not doing that, and then so it's impossible to know what was being asked unless you're in the stream itself. Okay, so wait, let me go. Okay, and I'll do my best to go in order. So, Jaihan, when do you use gamma versus vanilla? Okay, yeah. So Jaihan, this answer varies a bit by the user. I'll let you know how I use it, and I'll share from my knowledge how a couple other people use it. But the majority of people, basically, gamma is for everything more short dated, vana is for everything more long dated. So, for example, when we're day trading indexes, almost everyone uses gamma, right? There are a few users that use vana, like use the two of them together, but the great majority of people use gamma in isolation. And if so for example, the heat maps you guys have access to, like I know there's the bot where you can query anything you want, but in terms of the SPX, SPY, and QQQ, those heat maps are all gamma. So when you go look at those screenshots, there's always going to be a gamma. So if you're day trading indexes, those are going to be the three you want to use. What I will say is VEX tends to be more long dated. The only time you want to be checking VEX for short dated plays is if the VIX is very high and there's a lot of volatility in the market. So VEX is derived from the volatility of the contract. So those, if we have a very elevated VIX, VIX, like I know it gets a bit confusing, VIX versus VEX. But if we have an elevated VIX, a lot of times you'll want to use the VEX maps for certain tickers or the indexes if you're day trading. Now, I'll be honest, there are people who track the VIX all the time. So, for example, if any of y'all are familiar with the architect, I don't know if I think he's in this community, but he's someone that's pretty big on Twitter. He tracks the VIX all the time, right? And he has a couple calculations he does on his own privately to calculate some potential VIX levels, etc. But so I know he's somebody who he's constantly tracking VIX, the VEX maps as well. So that's why I say there is a small like subsection of the server that is actually very religious about using the VEX, even for a short time frame. But at least the majority we're using GEX for short term. Now, this has been all for indexes. So if you're trading 0 day, even 1 day contracts on indexes, I would just stick to the GEX for the most part. Now, for individual tickers, it's a bit muddier. Like there's a bit more subjectiveness. What I'll say is like most people doing under 2 weeks, they're biasing mostly off the GEX. Once you start getting further out, then you flip to the VEX more. Now, the important thing with individual tickers is, or at least the thing I recommend doing is using them both in conjunction, actually. So a lot of times when I'm taking a trade on an individual ticker, I'm getting my short-term thesis in terms of like where are we actually going to bounce, like what node is going to deflect price based on the GEX maps, and I'm using the VEX maps for my directional bias, right? So a lot of times, whether it's a 1 week play or even like a 1 month play, I'm looking at the GEX and saying, okay, where's a strong floor or a strong ceiling for the current week? That's going to be my entry point. But if the VEX is showing, okay, we have consistent upside over the next 3 weeks, then that might be a case where instead of buying a 1 week contract, I'll buy a 3 week or a 4 week contract. I'll catch that initial bounce and then I'll try to hold those runners a bit further, right? So again, like I would still probably take partials at the same point or a very similar point. But if the VEX is showing that we're going to have a sustained move over a few weeks, then that's the case where I'll want to hold it. So you kind of use them both together, if that makes sense, for individual tickers. So it takes a bit more time, but I think it's definitely worth it because with the indexes, obviously we have all three maps to go off of, right? We have three data points with SPX, SPY, QQQ, even VIX, or even IWM, some people. So you have 3 to 5 things to go off of. When you look at an individual ticker, you only have one GEX map to go off of. So it's a lot less certain of a picture. So you might as well use the VEX and you try to, build every extra bit of information you can, right? So you have a more sound thesis. So if you ever see the GEX and VEX misaligning, that's probably a good sign to stay away from that ticker for the time being, right? Okay. Dancing Dave. Okay, so you had the same question as Jaihan, it seems. The last thing I'll say about the VEX, VEX, is a lot of times some of the VEX nodes are pretty speculative. So let me see if I can find a good example actually. So a lot of times if you switch, yeah, my computer's definitely slow. Okay, yeah, next time I'm running this on Zoom. This is really annoying. Anyways, so a lot of times what you'll notice is VEX nodes tend to be pretty far out, right? Especially on OPEX, right? So this 417 is the April OPEX, and you'll notice some of these nodes are extremely far out there. So what I do recommend is when you're looking at these VEX maps, for example, here on deck, let's say, just to pick out random examples, we do have pretty large moves shown on VEX, right? But what you'll notice on deck is that this is not a sustained level. What I mean by that is, yes, we have a very large node 4 weeks out, but if you look at the weeks preceding it, we don't really have like consistent volume going upwards, right? Like 2 weeks out, we have this node down here at 96. 1 week out, we kind of have nothing. We kind of have a node up here at 106. Or sorry, 96 down here for 2 weeks out. So the best moves in terms of VEX or like a strong setup is when you see that over the next few weeks, we have a consistent push upwards, right? So we'll call that like a staircase, right? Where it's like it's consistently showing that dealers are positioned in an upwards direction week after week after week, right? Whereas if you just have one solitary node 1 month away to the upside, that's a bit harder to trust, if that makes sense. So for example, here on, oh no, that's an ETF. I'm going to skip that. I'm trying to see If I find another one, that's a pretty good example. Yeah, let's say this one, right? DLC, what is this? DocuSign maybe? So if DocuSign just has a random 100 node for next OPEX, a lot of times, but the 2 weeks preceding it are very empty on data. I view that a lot weaker than something where, I don't know, let's say we had a node at 90 and then 95 over the next 2 weeks, right? So I would be careful with Vex. Like sometimes they're a bit of like, I think of them as like pretty ambitious targets. So if the chart setup looks great, you can still go, still potentially a trade. But a lot of times I'll either size very lightly, treat it more as a lotto, or I'll just skip a play if I'm just looking at a single isolated node. Because always remember with this tool, we're not trying to, we cannot assume every node will just go and hit because they're kind of like moving targets, right? If you have a node that's very strong one day, in a week, it could be completely gone or shifted $10 lower. So that's why it's always safest to play deflections off of any strong nodes. Okay. Donnie, I asked previously to go through rugs and reverse rugs. Oh, yes. Actually, I owe not just you. I owe quite a few of y'all, and people from Asgard as well, a video on rugs. I'll see if I get to it tonight. I just started doing a bunch of videos, a few hours ago. So after this stream, if I'm able to get to it, I may post one on rug pulls and reverse rug pulls. For now, do you guys have? Give me 1 second here. Okay, so if you, I'm about to send this link over to y'all. So I think Patternpedia, yeah, so I think this will help a little bit. This has a couple examples here. All right. So Donnie, I just sent a link for the standard rug pull. We are working to update our whole documentation side. We haven't revamped it in a while. John has put in like a tremendous amount of work on like the written content and some quizzes and stuff. I'm doing more of the video side. So we're gonna have more documentation, but at least this is the current one showing rug pulls and inverse rug pulls. But I'll give, how do I draw this out? Yeah, I'll give a quick breakdown. Okay, so essentially the difference between a rug pull and an inverse rug pull. So actually, let me back this up actually. First, let me just quickly go over, I don't know how new everyone is to this or not. First, let me give an explanation of positive versus negative nodes, and then that'll help explain the rug pull once I get to that. So when we have positive and negative nodes, right? So positive, one other thing to clarify, positive won't always just show up as yellow. So a lot of times rug pulls are most recognizable when it's yellow above purple. That doesn't mean that's the only color variation that can happen. So if you look on this map over here, right, 85 is a positive node, but it's just not as strong as 73. So it's showing green, right? So always the thing I warn people with is the colors can sometimes not mislead you, but like they're coded to show how they are, right? Basically, the strongest node is going to be yellow, strongest positive node, and the strongest negative node is going to be purple, right? Everything else in between is just based on what percentage of volume that is relative to the strongest one. So not every time it'll be yellow above purple for the rug pulls. So you need to always double check what is, obviously the color is the easiest thing to spot, but once you do so and you have your initial thesis, just double check what is the volume on the node, and then two, what is the actual sign, right? Because there are going to be some weird circumstances where you actually have um, yellow nodes that are negative or purple nodes that are positive. And I'll try to give a few examples later on like when that happens. But so one thing I always tell people is double check what value you're looking at, what the sign is, because that can change. All right. So, anyways, so getting back to here. So if we have, let's say we have volume, an equal volume node, just one is positive, one is negative, right? What can happen, or the expected behavior, right, is as price drops into this positive node, we're going to deflect. We actually expect the same thing on the negative node, but the big distinction here is as the positive node is approached, it tends to be a lot more muted reaction, so a lot more sort of dampened. I think sometimes Glitch will even say like pillow, like Pika pillows, like Pika being Pikachu, right? Because it's yellow. Um, the key thing here is as positive nodes are approached, price a lot of times tends to slow down. Sometimes it can get pretty choppy. It can still deflect, right? If it's a strong node, it can still bounce off of it. But a lot of times it won't overshoot. It'll sort of just come, tap the level, and then we get that reversal, right? Negative nodes, on the other hand, a lot of times as we come and hit that level, we're going to get, we can expect an overshoot, right? That doesn't mean it happens every time, but there's essentially an increase in volatility at those levels. So a lot of times what'll happen is we tap the level, we overshoot it, and then we get this rapid bounce up. So it's kind of, think of it like a slingshot, right? Where price is coming down, hitting into the rubber band. As it sort of pushes it, it actually ends up bouncing out with more force, right? Due to that, like that rubber band effect, let's say. Um, so that's the key thing here. A lot of times when we're trying to trade off of negative nodes, what we can do is assume that we're going to get an overshoot, which means we're going to get basically a larger lower wick to form. And because we know that, a lot of times we can limit buy-in a lot cheaper, right? Versus a positive node, you still try to limit buy-in, just not as aggressively. So, okay, so that's the quick explanation. Now, to handle the rug pull question that, who had this? Donnie, I believe. So when we have the rug pull and then the inverse rug, which is just going to be this, uh, yeah, this is really laggy. Ah, this is so annoying. Okay, but anyways, so we have the rug pull and then we have the inverse rug pull. What happens is we're now combining the effect of the two, of the positive and the negative that I had just gone through, right? So price starts below. As we push up into the rug pull, what's going to happen is we hit this negative node and we're going to tend to overshoot. And if we look at this negative node in isolation, we tend to overshoot it and then snap back down. But what's happening is when we overshoot this negative node, we're now tapping into the positive node, which is also going to reject price. So the simplest way to look at these rug pulls and inverse rug pulls is it's kind of like both nodes are working together, right? But the big thing here is they work best together after we overshoot the negative node, right? So a lot of times people will enter these trades on the negative node itself, and you can, but I'd recommend that just be like a starter entry, or just like a much smaller position. And or if you're going to take a single entry, I would recommend you either wait for the midpoint between the positive and negative node, or even a full tap of the positive node. So just to make up numbers, let's say this negative node over here was 604, and this yellow node was 605, right? I'd be looking to enter at 604.5, or even a full tap of 605, right? Because that's when you truly have the overshoot of the negative node. You're fully tapping the positive node, and then they're both nodes are essentially pulling price down at that point. Now, everything I just said goes in reverse, right? When we have the inverse rug pull, where we come down, overshoot this negative node, tap, and then we bounce up by getting, again, sort of that rubber band effect off the negative node and a full tap of this positive node and a bounce, right? Hey, Bell's in here? What the heck? um, okay, so hopefully that explanation makes a lot more sense, Donnie. I think I'll leave it right here for now, but Donnie, one other thing I'll mention, not just to you, but to everyone here, is the revert or the rug pull and the reverse rug pull a lot of times are a lot easiest to play, or most times are easiest to play if we approach from the negative node, right? Once we start approaching from the positive node, what actually can happen is price can just hold that level and reject the positive node, right? So the best rug pulls are when we hit from the negative node side first, because then we get that overshoot, tap the positive, and then we get that full rejection. All right, hopefully that covered. And Donnie, I'll make a better video. I have one trade recap I think that covers this. Can you DM me? I'll either send it to you or I'll send it somewhere else, or I'll send it like in the general chat here. And then, but I am looking to make like a standalone video on this as well, where I'll go into this a bit more detail and give a few more examples. I know everything I sort of drew out here was pretty theoretical. Um, but actually, if you go look at, I don't remember if it was, no, it wasn't last Friday. I think it was 2 Fridays ago. If you use that midpoint rule, you were getting like basically top ticks on a couple of plays. Okay. Jade, can you explain? Yeah, Jade, I'll go over. Let me answer a few more questions, but I think after what I'll do is I'll just pull up Discord and I'll show you how you can use all the different heat maps you guys have access to, and how you use the heat seeker bot. So I will get to that, Jade. If I forget, give me a reminder. What is Asgard? Oh, Asgard is basically Asgard is the Discord server for everyone who's in Heatseeker itself, or who has access to, who bought access to Heatseeker. Yeah, like Heatseeker and OWLS are partnered, but basically each one still has their own server. So OWLS, like this is an alert server. Asgard, there's actually no alerts. It's just access to the tool itself. So sort of different purposes, but obviously they're partnered. So sort of you guys get some like limited access, and then I know a lot of the analysts use it as well. And not all of them, I believe, but I know quite a few of them are, yeah, either use it or are learning, um, sort of to complement their existing trading style. Like I know there's some people in here who trade extremely well for years before Heatseeker even existed. Okay, so that was Jade, Trade, Siri. Where do we find the tip guide for review? Can someone, Dancing Dave, can you elaborate what the tip guide is? I'm not sure if I know what that means. Crypto doc. Yeah, no problem. When Trinity is not showing confluence, like sometimes in afternoon today, how to read that chart? Yeah. So Crypto, do you have a specific time, or do I just pull up any point on Trinity this afternoon and then we look at it? So what I usually tell people. Oh, Sam's. I think I just answered your question about Asgard. Okay. So CryptoDoc, when we're not seeing conflict, yeah. So when we're looking at Trinity, obviously we're looking essentially at three sources of data, right? We have SPX, SPY, QQQ. Obviously, these are never going to just perfectly align, just because they're different vehicles. For example, SPX a lot of times is used to hedge a bit more than SPY or QQQ. But actually, recently I've seen the opposite. Sometimes SPY is showing some pretty large nodes downside that look more like hedges. So I know SPX and SPY actually move the same, and QQQ a lot of times moves roughly in line with them. But since they're different options change, they're getting different orders across all of them. So then the exposure levels that dealers have are different for each one, right? So the nice thing there is instead of trading off of just one of them, we can use all three of them together, right? Because if SPX is pointing straight up and you're looking at it in isolation, a play could look perfect, but then if SPY and QQQ are pointing straight down, you're probably going to get cooked on any kind of upside play, right? So the nice thing is since we have all three sources of data, we can use them together and say, okay, I only want to be taking trades that align very well across two of the maps or all three of the maps, right? So to your point, who said this? So to your point, CryptoDoc, right? When we're showing not good agreement or not good confluence across those indexes, a lot of times that's it's probably a bad time to be trading, right? So actually, a lot of times when the maps are pointing complete opposite ways, if it's very unclear, those will be days that we see a lot of chop, a lot of range bound price action. So obviously, if you're buying options, that's probably just a case you want to avoid, or just trade smaller size, or do more of like scalp plays, right? And look for maybe 30% and then just trimming there. Whereas if you're seeing good alignment, a good amount of range, then that's when you let sort of your runners go a bit further, and maybe you put down your normal size instead of sizing down. But yeah, Crypto, if you put down an exact time, I can pull it up and give you like my actual opinion of the exact. If you're thinking of a specific moment from today. What is Homeboy? I assume you can join. I don't know. Somebody DM Homeboy because I don't know how you text in the chat if you can't join. Denga. Yeah, Denga. So actually, that image, it is very easy to follow, right? Where we have obviously negative in front of, over positive and positive on top of negative. I actually don't like it though, because for me, the best place to enter those trades are at the positive negative flip point and not off the negative nodes. So I actually don't like that image at all, even though I know it's very it's very simple to follow. What if Crypto doc. This happens too. Yeah, so crypto that can happen where we bounce off the positive node if there's negative under. I have found sometimes those plays are a bit sketchier though, because what can happen is so let's take QQQ right now, right? If price is coming from above, I'm completely making up this scenario, right? Obviously, price is way lower, but if price is coming from 602 down towards 600, right? And we start to break under this node, this positive node, and then we sort of break and retest back on the 600, then the rug pull can start. So if I'm trying to establish is a positive level holding or not, that does go more towards like your price action reads. So like crypto dog, if we hold the positive node well, yes, we can reject off of a rug pull. But if you start seeing it like sort of creeping under and then approaching the negative side, then I get worried about, okay, maybe this positive node isn't going to hold, and then we're going to get that full rug pull. Like on the right side of your image, it would be a rug pull there, or on the left side, it would be an inverse rug. So hopefully that's okay. Yeah, CryptoDoc, send me what time, and I can look into it in more detail. But hopefully, with your image that you sent a bit before, that makes sense what I was saying. So in general, I like those plays a bit less. I'll still trade them at times, but I'll want to see a very good confluence on the other maps. But based off those alone, I would just probably skip. Now I will. I guess I will also state that I trade pretty conservative, right? Like I've gotten very picky about the setups I take. So now the reason for that is like when I first joined Heatseeker, I was, and even now, like I don't have like a huge portfolio, right? So then a lot of times I know people will scale, right? So like their A setups, they do a full unit. Their B setups, they do, I don't know, 3/4 or half a unit. And then maybe their C setups, they have like just as a lotto size. I essentially don't trade any C setups. I just do A and B. And honestly, like I just do mostly A setups. So anything that looks, even if something looks a little bit off, I'll just end up skipping it. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll paper trade and just track how it goes. But that's sort of like I still have what I classify as a B setup. I just don't trade them, if that makes sense. Um, okay. DPXY. What if rug set up on both sides of positive yellow? I don't know what that means. DPXY. Does that mean like if you have a positive node, a negative node in the middle, and then another positive node under? Or do you just mean if you have a stack of two positive nodes? Yeah, clarify that DPXY, and then I'll get to that. Um, yeah, Donnie. Yeah, I think at the end of this, I'll go through how I'd recommend y'all use some of the Discord access. Obviously, I have website access now, but when I first joined Asgard, so this was May of last year, there was only Discord access, right? So you get the maps basically on a 15-second refresh. And so I traded like that for months and months, right? Before the website or before Glitch like actually implemented the website access. So that's something I'm very familiar doing. And then there's probably a few things I can state there for some of the new people that they won't be aware of. Yeah, and Dancing Dave, if you can find that link, I'd appreciate it. Oh wait, oh yeah, no, never mind. You have dinner. All. Never mind. All right, what else we have? Yeah, thanks, Crypto Doc. I'll be on the lookout for your DM, but I'll probably be replying at like 2 a.m. or something. Read on the map at 11:03. Yeah, GG. Give me a second. Yeah, this is so slow. I hate this. All right. Let me swap over so you guys can actually. So I think at 11:03 GG, like chart wise, did QQQ make a new high? I guess it did, like barely. Like it was basically perfect double top. SPX had already reached it a little bit previous. Um, so chart thesis wise, that was present, right? But in terms of the maps, what we're looking at is, and I think it was actually a little bit before. Give me a second here. Yeah. So we had obviously this large stack of nodes on SPY, 660, 661. QQQ had this 593. Um, and then SPX, we had a huge ceiling up here, like 6650, right? So when did we actually tap 6650? Okay, so like the main thesis here, right, would have been, okay, we have this strong ceiling on SPX. But actually, this is one big thing I'll mention, right? So actually, Gigi, that's a pretty good thing you caught is price was moving upwards. So think of these nodes as magnets at times, right? Where if price pushed towards a magnet, a lot of times it'll get stronger, right? So a lot of times as price pushes upwards, the nodes above spot are usually going to be increasing a little bit in volume, and as price moves downwards, the ones on the downside are going to be increasing in volume. And consequently, if we're moving down, the ones above spot are actually going to be shrinking in value a little bit, right? So, and the tricky part with that is you kind of have to just track it mentally, especially y'all that are going to just be using the Discord maps. You're not going to be able to, that's not something you're going to be able to like use the velocity feature for or something like that, right? So, obviously, if you have website access, it's a bit different how you interpret that. But in any case, it's still something you can see just based on some of the number values. So, what Gigi's pointing out here is this 6,600, right? We have 5.6 thousand volume, sorry, 5.6 million, right? Because 5,600 K. But as price is moving up, what you'll notice is this node is actually, or it grew right here from 1103 to 1104, right? So it was going from 5,000, it shrank a little bit, but then we got it to pop from around like 4,000. What did this do? Pop from 4.8 thousand all the way up to 9.8, right? So if price is moving upwards, we're expecting downside nodes to actually be shrinking and upside nodes to be growing. So the fact that price was moving upwards, we saw such a large pop in 6,600. A lot of times that's a pretty good clue for us of like, okay, this is a divergence or this is sort of outside our expected behavior of the nodes. So for us, that's a good sign of like, okay, price is pushing up, but we're getting that large growth on the downside. That's a clue for us that okay, that's a very large increase in exposure, right? Where we would be expecting it to shrink. So a lot of times that would actually be a very bearish sign. Um, so yeah, Gigi, I think like the fact you caught that, that's like a pretty big one, right? Is anytime price is moving in one direction, but nodes in the opposite direction are growing, that can be a very good sign for us. So obviously that doesn't just mean we can just buy puts automatically, but in this scenario, right, where that had grown, we're at a ceiling at 6,650, we're at a double top on the chart. There's enough there, all put all together, that you would say, okay, I think I would consider taking puts here, right? And also SPY. So let me go back a little here. Yeah, what SPY also had is we had this 663 node. So we never quite tapped it actually. We only hit like 662.3 or point 0.4 ish. But as price was pushing upwards, what we'll notice is this 663 node actually picked up a lot of volume, right? So it strengthened as a ceiling. So that was also another clue of okay, we have our 6650 ceiling, but now we also have this SPY ceiling that we're relatively close to that can help us in this rejection, right? QQQ was not really a clear setup at this point, right? Like we had some downside pull. We didn't really have like a ceiling to deflect off of. So this trade's coming more from SPX, SPY, and especially SPX. SPX was the one giving the big clue on display. Uh, GG, you went long? Oh, yes, GG. One thing, like I would always, so a few things. Like one, you have to keep in mind the context of the whole day, right? So obviously we had gapped up like what 6 7 a.m. due to something Trump had said, right? So we already gapped up pretty massive. We already had a big push out the gate. Um, so I mean, of course, it's always anything is possible, but a lot of times we've already had such a strong push that I would not be looking for like further upside, right? To add in the double top that we were seeing develop, and I would have been pretty hesitant to long anything at that point, right? So I think if you took the QQQ reverse rug setup of 593, I mean that should have just been a green trade then, right? So you went long a little bit earlier, right, GG? Hopefully, like 10:45, maybe 10:50 on this candle. because you're easy, you know, you're making 50% there easy if you're playing this QQQ inverse rug. So if this is the case, like you had runners and you're just seeing if they would go further, then I think that's fine. But if you're longing at this point, then I'd be more concerned. 30%. Okay. Yeah, I mean, 30. Oh, you long later. I think you long later on. Gigi, can you text me the time of your entry? Like, because I think you may have entered like 11:20, 11:15, maybe. And we can chat about that. I'll get to you afterwards. Why is Bell still in here, man? Bell. All right. Jan, how does it affect if the king node is positive or negative? Jan, so in terms of like pull or the expected bounce, so what I always tell people is like what really matters with these nodes is the volume, right? When we're seeing strong volume, like if you just take the absolute value, right? Those are going to be the levels that we want to play off of. Whether it's positive or negative is telling us how price is going to react, right? So I think I explained earlier, like we're going to have a bit more muted reactions and bounces at positive nodes generally, and negative nodes tend to have a bit more overshoot and have a more like sharp reaction afterwards, right? Um, yeah, hopefully that covers your question, Jan or Yan. Jade, can I explain my A, B, or C setups? Uh, I mean, yeah, I'll give you a rough idea. I don't actually have it like strictly defined. I guess it's sort of just through feel and experience. But for any kind of A setup, it would just be, especially with indexes, right? Is if we're seeing all three indexes align. Now, I wouldn't recommend waiting for that just because it happens pretty infrequently. So that may be something where you're trading like twice a week. And you know, if you have the patience for that, all the better. But most people usually want to take at least 1 or 2 trades a day. So if that's the case, then I'd recommend your B setup can be anytime we have not just 2 out of 3 alignment, actually. So a lot of times what I'll say is like 2.5 alignment. What I mean by that is we're going to have a floor or a ceiling that exists very strong on 2 of the maps. So for example, in this setup, it would be SPX and SPY that we're sort of looking at as our ceilings. But then the 0.5, what I mean there is that like I don't want QQQ to be actively opposing the trade, right? So I know in this case the deflection downwards is coming more from SPX and SPY. QQQ though has more of a floor down at 593, so it actually has $2 of space to move, if that makes sense, right? Or $1.50 to move because it's at 594.7, right? So if that QQQ floor was at 594, the issue there is sure we may reject downwards, but if we have a floor right under price, that's going to be a very small move, right? So it's going to be more of a scalp, or it's just going to be a very, you know, maybe it'll get stuck sort of ranging there, right? So when I say 2.5 out of 3, what I mean is even if that third map doesn't have a strong floor or ceiling that supports your thesis, make sure it's not in the way of your thesis, right? So the fact here on QQQ, we have enough space to sort of get a solid move. That to me is saying, okay, it's not like fully in our favor, but it's not against us either, right? So that'll probably be my B setup, or even now again, like I'm probably a bit more cautious than others. Like some people would just be comfortable taking 2 out of 3. If we have 2 out of 3 alignment, even if that third map is going against them, they'd be comfortable taking that. That's just something where I typically won't do so. Okay, hopefully that answers that question, Jade. DPXY, yes, a positive node in the middle of a negative node. A positive node in the middle of a negative node rug setup. So DPXY, I believe what you're chatting about is like if we have a sandwich, right? I can't tell if you're doing like a positive negative positive sandwich or a negative positive negative sandwich. So I'll just explain them both, I suppose. So if you have a positive, negative, positive sandwich, where it's basically a rug pull and an inverse rug pull stacked on top of each other, but aiming towards each other, a lot of times I'll just avoid those just because sometimes what can happen is we'll either chop in that range or sometimes we'll just sort of pinball back and forth. Not pinball, like ping pong back and forth, right? So a lot of times I'll avoid them just because I don't scalp too much. Now, if you are comfortable scalping, that's probably actually pretty good conditions, where what you'd be doing is just waiting for the full positive node tap, whether it's the upside or downside, and playing that reversal back to the other side. So if you're very comfortable scalping and you're quick with your executions, you can probably do that pretty well in some of those cases. But for more people, if you want more of like a sustained larger move, what's going to happen is, sure, you may get that rejection or that bounce upwards that you're looking for, but since the opposing kind of setup is there, um, it's just not going to have very much space to move. So same thing I was saying here, was like if we were rejecting down and QQQ had a strong node at 594, it's just not going to give us a lot of space, right? So when you have a positive, negative, and then positive, it, the positive nodes are sort of limiting how far we can go in either way, right? And then the other one I'll say though is if you have a negative, then positive, then negative, it depends on the volume, but usually the way I treat those is just whichever side it comes from. If we hold the positive node, so this is like if you have a rug pull and an inverse rug pull pointing in opposite directions. Actually, give me a second, y'all. I should be sketching this instead of just explaining it verbally. I don't want to. I know sometimes with words it can be a bit confusing. So the second one I'm talking about is if we have like so, where we have one positive in the middle, and then the one I had just explained is the inverse of this. So it's if we take these all over here. Oh man, really slow with this computer. All right, there we go. So one on the right is the one that I just explained, DPXY. And then the one on the left, this is one where it's like, okay, if price is coming in, especially this works a lot better if this positive node is significantly stronger. If these are all similar volume, I just say like, okay, this is pretty tough to tell, and it's like maybe a lot of chop. But if the positive node managed to hold well, this is essentially just a rug pull pointing down, and then the inverse rug pull pointing up. As long as we don't cross over and this positive node holds strong, you can get basically whatever side you come from, it'll just deflect back. Whereas in this case, what you're getting is, okay, if we go out, we're just going to bounce back up here. But then if we bounce up here, we're going to bounce back down here, right? Oh man, these arrows are bad. But okay, hopefully that illustrates it a bit better. So then a lot of times what you'll end up with here is you'll get some pretty heavy chop, or a lot of times you'll just have price sort of just zigzagging back and forth there. Okay. Donnie, you only trade SPX on a scale 1 to 10. Uh, so Donnie, you've been trading SPX just based off the SPX maps in isolation? I think whether you get Trinity access or whether you just keep using the free access y'all get, I would still recommend you look at all three, right? Because, like I mentioned before, and this is like, I don't just say this in theory. Like I used to actually trade only off SPX maps because that's all the tool had. Like this was before SPY and QQQ got implemented. As soon as SPY and QQQ got implemented, I noticed that like, okay, we were a lot more consistent and there were less days where we were just completely wrong. Like when we were just trading off SPX, there were some days where it's just like you'd feel way off, right? And what was happening on those days is like, okay, maybe SPX had some huge upside node, but then SPY and QQQ had a huge ceiling, like half a dollar above, right? So obviously SPX still has that node, but it's probably not going to push through those ceilings on SPY and QQQ and get there. So I would recommend whether it's within, whether it's Trinity access or just the free maps, like I would absolutely recommend you still check all three. It doesn't matter if you trade SPX, SPY, or QQQ. I would look at all three always. So I basically, like, I don't have a bias for SPX. I have basically an index overall market bias. And whether I trade SPX, SPY, QQQ, I've never done NDX, but in theory, NDX or even futures, right? If you're doing NQES or MES, MNQ, like I'm deriving the same bias for basically all of the market. And then which one I actually choose to execute is more just on feel. So for example, today, maybe I would have taken, so I didn't trade this morning, but like, let's say maybe I would have taken SPY puts instead of QQQ because SPY had swept first. So just to give like, sometimes there's things like sometimes the level looks a little more clear on one than the other, and that's why you trade on that. Or for example, if calls here in the afternoon, you would have taken out QQQ because it was closer to a double bottom than SPY, right? Like there's some of that stuff there, but like obviously I know SPX has its tax advantages, so like if you only execute on SPX, that's fine. But I would I derive I guess a full index bias, right? It doesn't matter if I'm trading only one particular index or not, or if I'm varying it across the three. Okay. GG, you went long. Okay, yeah, GG. I think I told you to DM me about that one. Is there a code to put nodes on TradingView chart? Yeah, and so I think a few users have actually made some workaround kind of indicators. I don't actually know how those work. Yeah, and I think you're in Asgard, are you? It's hard to know who's over there and who isn't. Yeah, you're in Asgard. Okay, yeah. So DM me. I think I can send you the. I'll send you that after. But I think there's a couple users that made some. I think one is for TrendSpider, but I think there are a couple that are TradingView. So I can point you to the right place for that. Sadid, can I go over end of day dump? Yeah. I don't. Oh wait, whoops! I closed the. Wait, give me a second here. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Yeah, I'm gonna do this on Zoom. The sketch, or for future ones, the sketch tool thing is a lot better on Zoom as well. All right. End of day dump. Yeah, we'll see. I don't actually know what was going on. So, all right. So obviously SPX, we had this large 6600 node. Actually, this I guess I don't know if you mean this dump starting around 2, or if you mean the one late mock. I'm probably not gonna cover this mock play because mock is. I mean, yeah, mock is mock. I don't want to spend too much time on it just because it's one of the more unpredictable times of day anyways, so there's not too much point in getting into those details. But anyways, in terms of what was I gonna say? Okay, so in terms of this full drop when we started a bit earlier, um, what we had already seen setting up is we have this large ceiling, obviously on SPY, and then QQQ we kind of have we have this very large node anchoring at 590. Then we also have a bit of a rug pull up here, a bit higher above. So at least right now the setup actually doesn't look that clean, but let's see. Because we got this big pop, right? Just before we got that big sell off. So on that pop, yeah. So on that pop, what you'll see is, um, oh, so actually, this is one thing I should clarify about the rug pulls. So 660 and 659 and 658. So this is a good example, right? Of this by color, this looks like a rug pull. It's not actually a rug pull. So what's happening here? We're pushing towards 660. This is just a rejection of a large node, right? The nodes at 658 and 659 are basically they're too small, so it's I'm viewing them as an air pocket, but it's not actually a rug pull because they're not negative, right? It's I know they show purple, but yeah, I guess that's one distinction I'll make there. Whereas QQQ, this 592, 593, that is a rug pull, right? Because we have sizable negative volume and sizable positive volume, both showing, right? Okay, yeah, so I just want to make that clarification. But yeah, this setup, what we got, although actually, yeah, the 659 became more negative, so then it kind of did turn into a rug pull actually on SPY. But previous to it, it was, we didn't actually see that. So let me go minute by minute. But at this point, what we're seeing is, I don't know at what point exactly, but at some point we did overshoot the 659. So yeah, this is a really good example of what I was saying earlier too. If you look at the actual rejection point here, right, we're looking at 659.4, 659.5 ish. So again, this is this midpoint that's going to be pretty crucial for taking these entries, right? I know QQQ we didn't quite actually tap into this rug pull, so the argument was a lot weaker on that side. But SPY obviously we're hitting into that 660, we're approaching it, we're getting the 659 to overshoot, and then SPX we don't really have a ceiling that we're deflecting off of, but we do have this large pocket of volume down here at 6600, right? Where price eventually did fall all the way down there, and then actually we got a bit of a reaction there as well. But yeah, I will say QQQ was a bit misaligned here, right? Issue with QQQ is we kind of had a floor down here at 590. But one thing is, as the day goes on, obviously you need less of a move to still make this sort of the same percent gain. So if this was very early in the day, you probably wouldn't be trading like a $1 move down on QQQ. Like generally, I'd be looking for more of a range. As we approach late day, a lot of times these plays will open up a bit more just because you don't need as drastic of a move for your contracts to still pick up really good value, right? So obviously we had this drop off, and again, even this bounce that happened like at around 3:30, you already see this setting up almost a full hour in advance, where you see the 6600 node on SPX and this strong 590 node on QQQ. And if you look, that's almost exactly where we bounced, right? We bounced. I mean, we overshot it a bit, but then we bounced like $1 basically on QQQ, and SPX bounced like $10 roughly. So I think that's something I'd recommend for any of you that are more new to this, right? Is try to find a lot of these plays that actually set up a bit in advance, just because those are plays where 30 minutes ahead of time, you can already say, look, we have these strong floors that align across SPX and QQQ. Let's see if we go hit them. And if we hit them, then I'm willing to play that reversal, right? And so even if you miss this initial trade, right, you probably had this one in the bag already, right, for this bounce within power hour. Okay, I don't know who asked this question. Sadid? Yeah, hopefully that covered that. Oh, you're saying the late day one. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll look at it, but generally I don't cover these too much. Same for the same reason I don't cover the beginning of day ones, just because those are such volatile periods that usually for people learning to use the tool, I don't encourage they trade them at all. You want to be trading periods that are a lot more stable. There's less reshuffling. The price action's a bit slower, just because that's where you're going to have the highest chance of success. And then with time, once you have a lot more comfort, then you can trade sort of that initial 30 minutes of the day or those last 15 to 20 minutes, especially last 10, like pure mock last 10 minutes. Like it's a crapshoot a lot of the time. So I'm usually, I usually don't cover them too much just because I don't want to like encourage that too much until people are a bit more comfortable with the tool, right? But in any case, so what do we have here? Wait, something's wrong with this. Wait, give me a second here. Why is this showing 340? Oh, I think this scroll bar is messed up. Yeah, showing 339 instead of 340. Okay. Yeah, something's up with the scroll bar. Oh, that's annoying. All right. What I'd expect happened here, because at least at this point, actually, 340, we're actually above this 590 floor. So what I'd probably expect is we're just going to see a ton of downside accumulation start to grow. And that's when sort of these, because at least right now, 590 is semi as a floor. But what's going on here is actually, no, I guess we're still within 50, 60 points. So that could just be an overshoot of that as a ceiling. Well, let's see though. So I guess, yeah, this is this bounce from when we dropped down and got this bounce upwards that I was stating before. But then probably what we're going to see. Yeah, so a couple things you're already spotting, right, is like this 587 node on QQQ, right? And so this is something especially for y'all just using Discord maps. There's really no other way to spot this other than just looking at the numbers. Like in terms of color, that 587 is not changing that much, but if you'll notice over like a 5 minute period, this went from 40 to 90,000, right? Or from 50 to 90,000. So almost a 100% increase. And the color didn't change so much just because this 590 node has so much of the volume. But this is one of the big clues, honestly. Like any on the other two maps, we're not seeing as rapid of an increase. Um, and then I think we just start flushing, right? Yeah. So as well, SPY, right? So SPY also gives a good clue because this 656 starts picking up a lot of volume, right? So you see, we're going from 300,000, and then it within, let's say, 4 minutes, it actually swaps to being 400K, and then actually the king node, right? So a lot of the 657 starts rolling down, and same thing on SPX, right? It starts ripping down towards 6590. But like I said, this is so late in the day, and this mock period is so volatile that these shifts are happening in like minutes, probably quicker than minutes. So actually, the replay tool is limited to 1 minute minimum. Like that's the minimum time value. If we were able to skip 20 seconds at a time, 30 seconds at a time, we would see these shifts happening like a bit more easily. But that's, yeah, I guess that's one of the what I was mentioning earlier of like why I usually don't cover these too much is because some of these changes in volume are so quick that it's very hard to actually execute on them, right? But yeah, hopefully that helps, Sadid. Uh, in terms of chart thesis, I don't know. I guess we are retesting this level on SPX. QQQ, we didn't really have one. I guess if you do like a bearish fib here, but I usually don't do it that low time frame. I prefer more macro fibs. Okay, where are we? Yan. SPX has downside in King node for tomorrow with QQ spike QQQ. Yan, I believe there are people who they'll track some of the large nodes that exist on GEX and VEX, and they'll use them for overnight futures. I haven't done it myself, so I don't want to say too much on it, but I do think I know quite a couple people that have had pretty good success with that. And I think even some people, so gold and silver move a lot overnight, especially during Asia session. Like I guess a lot of people in Asia trade gold. So they'll use gold heat map levels and they'll just map them out sort of with an indicator converting from GC to GLD. And they'll use those levels for overnight plays. Um, I can, I don't remember who does that. I can try to find like a couple names if you're curious about that, Jan. Or Jan, what I'd recommend is go into the futures chat and just ask, does anyone trade those periods? Because there's definitely a few people in there that do so, and they can give you better advice than I can. Because I mean, I know they do it, right? But I don't know if they're just blindly just going off the nodes, or are they adding in some other confluence from, I don't know, standard deviations or macro fibs or just your general support resistance. So you may want to ask that question over there. MBRR, due to Discord and heat map. Yeah, so one second. I have to sneeze, y'all. Okay, apologies. Um, yeah, the pollen's getting worse. Okay. Okay. Yeah, MBRR. I think at the end of this, I'm going to go through a few resources I sent in this server, and then I'm going to go through how I would recommend using the Discord bots that you guys have access to. So let me try to cover the rest of these questions, and then I'll do that sort of at the tail end. Sam, so I do regular. Do I do regular TA alongside heat seeker? Yeah. So Sam's heat seeker, similar to Flow heat seeker, like any tool in trading is a supplement to the charts. So yeah, like anything chart wise is always going to go like that's top priority, right? So any kind of play you're looking at heat seeker and you see no chart thesis, I would be pretty worried, or just skip it, or maybe you missed the level. Like actually, I've had times where I didn't see a level that I had charted, but then I sort of maybe scrolled further back or went to a higher time frame, and then I ended up finding it. So sort of like heat seekers sometimes will catch levels that I miss. Um, but if you're not able to identify a level that aligns with what you're seeing on the maps, I would not recommend taking that play. So a lot of times you'll want to see some kind of double bottom support resistance flip. Um, at least probably 90% of my charting is just horizontal lines. Like I just use the Ray tool on TradingView. I'll occasionally do some more macro like Fibonacci retracements, but that's more for individual tickers. I've stopped doing those on indexes, I'll be honest. Just to keep things simple, I'll just say, okay, yeah, I'll do double bottoms, double tops, any kind of support resistance flip. It doesn't have to be anything too special, right? Because the way I'm viewing it is like if I go catch 1 to 3 trades a day, that's already enough, right? So I would keep it pretty simple in terms of chart TA. I know. Well, no, actually, I won't say anything. I don't know. A lot of the analysts here, I think, use few different other. I know a lot of them are pretty big on flow. That's not something I have experience with, but I mean, clearly it works. I've seen some of the plays in this server. But at least from a heat seeker perspective, I think it pairs pretty well with just general support resistance or supply demand, however you want to like name it, but it's all sort of the same principles. I will also say my I'm really bad about like not clearing my charts, so a lot of times I will have some junk lines. So a lot of times when I am trading, I'm actually like verifying in the moment, is this a real level or not? Because I'll have levels left over from a long time ago. So do not trust the levels on my chart too much. Okay, but hopefully that helps Sam's. Is Sam still in here? Yeah, Sam's still in here. Okay, Jade is Pika. No, so Jade, King node is just the largest exposure on a map, right? So many times it will be positive, but that's not always the case. So let me see if I can find you an example where it's not. So for example, right now on SPY, right? The King node is actually a 665, so it'll have this little star. Oh, I think the issue is y'all. Wait, let me double check. I think on Discord it doesn't have the star. Yeah, on Discord it doesn't have the star. Okay, so for y'all are just gonna have to use y'all are just gonna have to check all the um not check, but basically just check the most purple and the most yellow and see which one of those is stronger absolute value wise, and that's gonna be your king node, right? A lot of times it will be positive, but there are gonna be cases where it's negative. So I would not assume that. Also, after price touches the node, do we ignore this node and the price will go touch the next node? No, Jade. So Heatseeker is best at telling us where we expect price to react, right? So a lot of times if we have a strong ceiling, set of ceilings or a strong set of floors, we know price will react there. We cannot just assume because price reacts there that it's immediately going to go to the next node above or below, depending what direction you're playing. So what I always tell people is to keep it simple for now is like you want to make sure you're taking some trim after that initial reaction, right? Because if you're able to get a very good, let's say like not top tick but close to it or on the bottom side as well, like a very early entry before you see any kind of confirmation, you're already going to be up a good 30-40% and you're going to be able to trim, and then whether we go to the final node like that stretch target or not is not going to matter. Like obviously you have your runners and it'll be nice if it goes there, but it doesn't need to for you to have that trade be green. So let me sketch something out real quick that'll maybe help out. So the thing is like we never know. Price action is price action, right? We can never, if we could predict it every bit of it, everyone would be rich. But so the goal with Heatseeker, right, is that we're trying to get entries like near the top or near the bottom, right? But say you get this entry here at the bottom, we don't actually know, is price here going to fully reverse the trend? So obviously here we've had lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. We don't know if price is fully going to reverse this trend and sort of have, however you want to call it, change in state of delivery or market structure shift or whatever. We don't know if it's fully going to break out like that, or are we just going to continue this downtrend, right? So, there's clues and there's some other things we can used to help, but we never know. So the point is, if you're able to get an entry that's very close to the bottom, by the time we hit this point, or maybe a little bit higher, when we're sort of that point where we're trying to decide, okay, is this going to be a full shift in regime, or are we just going to continue downwards? You can already trim here for 30-40%, right? Because we were able to get in without any kind of confirmation, right? If you're waiting for confirmation and you enter here, you wouldn't be able to trim here because you'd only have like 10% profits, right? Whereas if you're able to catch it closer to the bottom, you're already up 30, 40, 50%. So you're able to trim, leave runners. And after that, it doesn't matter what happens, right? If it reverses back down, you get a break even hit here. And if it keeps going, obviously you can trim as it goes higher and higher and higher, right? So I would not say that once price hits, we just start ignoring it. Like there's a lot more that goes into that. And I'll give you, I guess after this, I'll give a couple like tips there. But I think one of the big things and one of the big mistakes people make when they first use the tool, not because of like not anything on their side, right? I think it's almost everyone that first started using it. This is like a natural way to assume it'll work. Is like once we bounce off of a node, we must go to the next higher node, right? But the danger there is at that point you're viewing that next node up as a target, and you're basically assuming it has to hit, and that's going back to what I said earlier about these are essentially moving targets, right? You don't know if the volume that's at a node upwards is going to be sustained. Is it going to drop off? Is that node going to move lower? It's hard to tell in the moment, right? So if we're able to catch that initial reaction where we know there's a lot of dealer positioning at certain levels, we can catch that initial base hit, trim, and then we have runners to see if we go to that max upside node or not, right? But we should not be relying on a node to sort of pull us all the way, because that's when you start running into a lot of issues where the node will fade or it'll shift lower, and then you end up sort of back holding a pretty unfavorable position. um I was gonna make another comment on this. Also, the other thing, just because we bounce off of a node doesn't mean we can just ignore it, right? So if we bounce off of a node and we see the volume starts to diminish a lot, and volume is now shifting higher, that's a very good sign, and we probably won't go revisit it. But a lot of times we'll bounce off of a node, and that node will just it'll hold the volume it has, or it'll even increase the volume it has. So a lot of times what'll happen there is price will go and revisit that node, right, and either double bottom or maybe just gravitate towards that node and stay there, right? So just because price has just deflected off a node doesn't mean it's like now out of play. But it's definitely something where you want to check, okay, when we tap the node, what kind of volume did it have? And then as time has progressed, how has that volume increased, decreased, stayed the same? And that's going to give you a big clue of, do we expect that node to revisit or not? Um, I have a good example for that, I think, on gold. Because a lot of times we tap nodes and they like the volume just dies off huge, right? So I think there's a good example in gold I can try to go find, and I'll send in the heat seeker. I'll send it in the support channel. So who asked this question? Yeah, Jade, if you can you DM me, and I'll make sure to do that later tonight. Okay, Admiral paintbrush, Admiral. I don't know. Well, I don't know what you mean there. Paint palette. Oh, the setting. Yeah, Admiral. So actually I just made a video covering like what that paintbrush setting changes. So yeah, I probably won't go into that here, just because I know for people on OWLS, it's not if they're using Discord access, it's not actually a setting they can toggle. DPXY, is it better that we sell iron condors if those three index in confluence without king nodes? Ooh, DPXY, I don't think I understand that question. If the three indexes are in confluence, a lot of times that's good for a directional play. Iron condors you can trade if there's ever a day where we have no or where we have very little agreement, right? So if all three maps, like we've had some days where SPY points straight up, QQQ points straight down, and SPX just has a range, right? That might be a good day to do an iron condor, because it's very unclear which direction we're going to go. So if you think it's going to stay range bound, that might be a day where you can do an iron condor. Um, I will say, unless you have previous experience doing iron condors, I would really look into them. Like make sure you're comfortable knowing what you're doing. Paper trade them for a month or two on like Thinkorswim or whatever platform you use. They can be very disastrous if mismanaged, so I would be very cautious with them. So if you need, I made a video about that, so you can message me if you want. If you have previous experience, you're probably fine. But if it's something you're new to, I would caution against it. It's probably better to just not trade at all and wait for a day that's more favorable. Kryptonite. So I don't use any confirmations. No kryptonite. So a lot of times, if I'm entering double top, double bottom, my rule is I just want to see the previous swing low or swing high sweep. Once that sweeps, then I'm taking that reversal. Obviously, I want to pair that with a good setup on the heat maps. But no, I'm not like, I don't know, if you do futures, I'm not waiting for an inverse fair value gap. If I'm not waiting for the first two bullish candles to form and then entering, it's the general rule of thumb is actually as price drops and hits that level, that's actually where I'm entering. So if I'm taking calls, I'm actually entering on red candles, right? By doing that, what happened is as price is dropping, the call premiums are deflated, right? As soon as you print that first green candle, call premiums then start to spike already, right? So if you're able to get in on that red candle immediately before, or even a little bit before, then that's sort of the way or the style in which I'm taking these trades. So actually, that's like a pretty simple rule of thumb I've told not everyone, but a lot of people is, if you're looking for calls, like you're looking for reversals, right, with this trading style. So if you're looking to enter calls, you should be entering off of red candles, right? And if you're looking to enter puts, it should be off pump candles, right, or green candles. So it's awkward at first, like it takes a lot of getting used to. So what I tell people is just take it easy in terms of like make sure it's low volume, make sure it's a paper account, whatever you need to do, so it's something where you can just test it freely. But obviously, if your normal size is $500 per trade, and you're testing something new with $500, it's going to heighten your stress. So if it's something you're not comfortable with, then make sure you're doing it in a low stakes environment while you practice, right? Yeah. So yeah, yeah. I know a lot of people do like inverse fair value gaps, and it works, right? Like I think that's a different style of trading. Um, but yeah, I guess you have to recognize what is the way you're looking to execute, and is it something where you need confirmation or not, right? So a lot of people doing inverse fair value gaps, and I've seen some people who are extremely good at doing it, right? But a lot of times they're looking for, okay, we're seeing a sign of a bit of confirmation here. We have more of a sustained move. So there's one guy in Asgard that's like extremely well versed in doing inverse fair value gaps, but all of his moves are slightly longer holds, right? And they're more of he's looking for larger pushes, right? Whereas a lot of times heat seeker, like you'll be able to get 30, 40%. Like I've seen some trades go in 2 minutes, right? So sort of a different style there. So just and I'm not saying one's better than the other, etc. Right? It's just you need to know for yourself what matches well, and then do the one that you're most comfortable with, right? Oh, there's people on YouTube. Oh no. Jovi Capital. Shout out to you. Yeah, thanks, Jovi. I don't actually know. I don't know your Discord username. It's hard to track. Yeah, I have to track like people's real names, their emails, their Discord name, their display name. So yeah, I get sorry if I don't recognize some of the people on YouTube. It's not intentional. Yeah, yeah, no problem, Kryptonite. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I think I'll get into some of the how I'd recommend using the actual Discord access that you guys have. Because I know the website compared to what some of you guys are doing on the free, oh my goodness, what is this? What you some of you are doing on the free Tuesdays and Fridays is a bit different. So I don't want to, yeah, I don't mean for the session to just be like, oh, like here's how you do it on the website and you guys can't use it. Like that would just be uh that would not be very nice of me to do. So all right, let me see how I can share my screen. How do I do this? All right, wait, give me a second, y'all. I'm trying to not share DMs, which is why I'm doing it like this, but it might not be possible. All right, give me a second here. Holy crap. My computer is going real slow. All right, that's good enough. All right, so y'all can see Discord now, right? For everyone in here. Oh, hopefully. Uh, oh wait, let me see what Jill said. Oh, Jill sent in setups. All right. So I think first thing in terms of resource, someone had asked about some resources. If you go over here to this analysis, how do I close this preview? Does someone know? I'm just gonna put it down here. All right. Oh my goodness. Wait, sorry, y'all. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not too good with. All right. Yeah, I'm not too computer savvy. Anyways, so in this heat seeker analysis, um, I think pinned in this channel, I had sent a couple. Oh, what? It's not pinned in here. Okay, wait. Well, I'm gonna go pin it right now. Where did I put this? Did I not send it in here? All right, I might not have sent it in here. I'm gonna send it in here after this, and I'll pin it. But basically, I'm gonna give a list of like all the resources I would use. So it's gonna be a lot of links to Glitch's YouTube channel. Glitch is always gonna be your primary resource. He has a couple of videos going through like the intro to the tool. He has a couple of videos going over recap days, right, where essentially end of the day at night or on the weekend, he sort of went through a specific day that he thought provided a lot of opportunities and sort of goes through each setup that he thought was very clear, and then just take some questions from people listening in. So that's always going to be your top resource. I will also link John in my YouTube. So John has a lot of videos, especially in the futures space. Like John is very, very proficient with futures, um, and also like index scalping option side. So he has like a little boot camp he did for futures. So for any of you interested in that, even if you're not interested in futures, I would still go through some of those videos, just because a lot of the chart technical analysis is something that you can use yourself, right? And then I'll also include mine. Mine has some daily recaps. I have a couple sessions just on like random topics. So I think I have one just like on sizing, contract selection, one on credit spreads, one on one of the inverse fair value gap strategies that one of the people in Asgard uses. So I have a few different videos there and then a few daily recaps. If there's any, I'm also going to be adding a lot of videos on intro to heat seeker. So in terms of what does it look, when we're looking for strong volume, what does that mean? Difference between positive and negative, rug pull, inverse rug pull. So some of the stuff I've covered here, but I'll try to cover it more formally in sort of like a 5 to 10 minute video per topic. So I'll be looking to basically spam out a ton of those videos this week. So that should be something that some of y'all can be on the lookout for. But anyways, I'll send that in here after this and I'll pin it. So sorry that it's not currently in there. In terms of, oh, okay, so in terms of these maps, right? So like I said before, the three maps you guys have feeding in every 15 seconds are SPX, SPY, QQQ. If you open these up, you'll notice this is basically a 5-day view, and it's showing only GEX, right? So the bot up here when you see net gamma, this is all GEX data. So it's a bit annoying, but what you essentially have to be doing is flicking through all three of these threads. And as you do so, you're basically noting down, okay, what levels have strong volume. As you'll see here on SPY, for example, if Friday nodes are very, very strong, that's where our peak yellow and our peak purple nodes are over here on Friday. The nodes for the current day, this being Tuesday, so right tomorrow, March 24, they're going to be a bit more dull, right? So this is pretty important. Like if you're looking for a rug pull or inverse rug pull, it's not going to show as yellow on top of purple because of that, right? So always make sure you're also looking at the volume of the nodes, and that'll sometimes clue you in cases like this where everything just looks like it's green or blue. So you're kind of looking at this and you're like, I don't get it. Like this doesn't make any sense. So always make sure you're looking at the volume itself, right? So on a day like, at least currently, right? Obviously this is going to reshuffle during the day. But at this point, you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, we have a strong ceiling right here, minus 13,000. We also have this large node up here, minus 20,000. And then we have this couple of nodes down here as well, right, that have strong volume. But you're having to sort of compare it to the column itself relative, right? So the colors sometimes won't be, you can't sort of fully trust them. And so in cases like that, always default to looking through the numbers. I know it takes a bit longer, like it's a bit slower, but um, you'll never go wrong by looking at the numbers. That's always my opinion, is the numbers, they will show you the full picture. Okay. Whoa, this is lagging really bad. Sorry. Okay, why is this? Sorry, give me a second here. Okay. Oh, okay. And I wanted to show y'all how to use the bot. Okay, so obviously those three maps that you're seeing is only SPX, SPY, QQQ. Any other map, right? And you'll see a bunch of people have been messaging in here all day. You're gonna have to use the heat seeker bot, right? So you can use this for a couple things. This is gonna be any kind of individual ticker you're gonna pull is through this bot. Any kind of Vanna map, you're also gonna pull it through this map. So any kind of VEX map. And then also you can use this channel as your replay tool, right? Obviously, if y'all don't have website access, you don't have the replay built in, but this bot is able to pull old data as well. So I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing I'll say is, so easiest way to do this, if you just press like backslash, or is this forward slash? Whatever slash this is, and then you do HE, and then you just tab, you'll see that you have slash heat map and then ticker, right? So once you're in here, let's say you want to look at SPX, right? For SPX, make sure you do SPXW. It's not just SPX. And then you'll tab again. If I press enter on this right now, what this is showing me is current SPX heat maps, right? So obviously, if I do this for SPY, this has not updated since market close. Actually, SPX is the only one that does update overnight, so I take that back. But in terms of SPY, oh my goodness, it's not working. Wonderful. Give me a second here. Just when I'm trying to. Okay, there we go. So you do SPY. If you just specify the ticker, it's actually going to give you both the GEX and the VEX map. So if you'll notice here, oh shoot, MBR just did. Okay, yeah. So MBRR is doing the same thing while listening, right? So he just pulled the GEX, so GEX just comes out first, and then the VEX is being spit out second, right? So I don't know. Like let's say you want to be trading Snowflake, right? Then that's how you essentially want to do this. So if you're looking to, like what I recommend for individual tickers, obviously the indexes are going to shuffle a lot throughout the day, so I wouldn't actually pre-plan it. Individual tickers, you can actually pre-plan a little bit. So if you have more time at night than during the day, if you have work or whatever else, and this is something I used to do, is like I would just go through basically my watch list or tickers that I'm very familiar with, and I would go through and pull up all the maps for them, right? And I'd say, okay, I don't know. Yeah, Snowflake. Where do we have a strong floor? Do we have a strong ceiling? Is it a map that I like? And I'm sort of going through and saying, okay, I would save every map that I think looks good, and then I would go check the chart and I'd say, okay, is 172, is 167 a good level? Is this something that I want to end up trading, right? So that's something you can do at night if that's where you have more time availability or pre-market, whenever you have the time, right? The other thing you can do if you want to do the replay, right? So if we want to see what did SPX look like at noon, if you type it in and then instead of pressing enter, you press tab again, you're going to see this date time option. You don't need to use this type filter. That's actually just for filtering between GEX or VEX, but I'd recommend not putting it in because you just get both of them. You get more info if you don't put it in. For daytime, then you can come in here and you can say, okay, 2026, March 23rd, yeah, 12, right? One important thing, it says it here in like small font, but it's 24-hour format and Eastern time for any times you're putting in here, right? If I go ahead and do this, then this is going to give me SPX at noon. So you'll notice he'll say it, right? SPX at whatever the date and time you listed, and then it'll show you the full map, right? One other big thing I'll mention is, so you can actually backtest with this too, right? Let's say you want to look at, I don't know, what did January look like, and you just want to sort of go practice. So I actually recommend that a lot of people do it. It's a little clunkier with the Discord bot instead of like the the website access. But you can definitely do so where you say, okay, like I'm gonna go check January whatever, I don't know, January 15th, if that's a weekday, hopefully. And you just say, I'm gonna check the heat maps every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes, and I'm gonna go back test and see could I have caught some of the reversals, like what do some of these patterns look like. So what I actually recommend for some people, if that's something you're looking into doing, is like just go to SPY and either use FX Replay or Trading View, and you can just go to the. Is this the bar replay? Yeah, yeah. So you use the bar replay. You can just say, all right, let's go trade January 15th. And then you can sort of say, okay, pull up the heat map at 10 a.m., 10:30, 11. Or what you can do is, oh God, sorry for the slow computer here. What is going on? All right, here we go. So this is, all right, I don't know why, but it took me to February. Whatever. So figure out how to use the trading view bar replay. But the whole point is like you can go to a bar replay day, play through it as if it was live, and then just look for any big reversals and just go check the heat maps at that moment, right? And say, okay, was this something I could have caught? And then you'll start to see the same patterns emerge over and over. And that's what you really want to start noticing, right? So again, not every reversal is easily catchable, let's say, but like some of them will be. So honestly, yeah, I don't know, maybe here, February 3rd, 206. Actually, I'm curious. Yeah, we can go look. All right, wait, I'm gonna do this on the website because I don't want to pull it up 3 times. I'm lazy, but yeah, I think there's 3 months of data you can go back test. So I don't know when this reversal was. 2 p.m. That was a bit later. 206. What was going on this day? These maps are crazy. But yeah, so here roughly what we have is, okay, you could say we have 685 node overshooting, and then we also have this SPX node that looked like it's about to tap, and then sure enough, yeah, you get this reversal here, right? So yeah, like I just ballparked this day, and this is not probably like the best example, but you can do roughly this process, right? Where you go to months that have already happened, trading days that have already happened, pull up the heat maps at different intervals, and then that can be information you use to sort of learn, right? Because this also turned into sort of like a pattern recognition kind of deal, right? Where it's like the more heat maps you look at, the more sort of different scenarios you've seen or not, that'll help you for the next time identify those same patterns popping up, and it'll be something that you can track and then sort of build consistency from, right? Okay, so hopefully that covers how you can use some of those or those different threads for anyone who's new. Uh, Jade, so always remember anything that's green or blue is just positive or negative, just not as extreme. So you still